Welcome to the Light Forest Podcast, a space to engage in deep, reflective conversations at the intersection of planetary crisis, inner transformation, and systems change. My name is Dave, the host of this podcast, and across this season, many of the guests that I've had on have made references to the intuitive mind and intuition, sixth sense, inner voice, authentic selves, and spirit. Many words, all pointing in a similar direction. This is a big part of what I mean by light in Light Forest. And so today, we're going to take a long walk in this direction through a new word, guidance. Hi, my name is Dave, and this is the Light Forest Podcast, a journey of exploration to bring more light into how we live and regenerate our planet. Joining us today to guide us on this walk, we have Pallavi Laxmikanth. Pallavi works as a researcher, designer, and educator, roles she carries in the outer world as an academic and former startup leader, as well as in the inner worlds of truth and spirit. Her spiritual curiosity about who and what we are, how we function, and how we must live has taken her through formal training in biotechnology, medical anthropology, and cybernetics, as well as through spiritual commitment via inquiry-based non-duality practices, Vedic astrology, yoga, and energy medicine. We will journey with her as she intersects and intertwines these worlds, offering perspectives on how to bring spirit and spirituality into everyday life, health, work, and more. Pallavi's deepest desire is to help us remember who we truly are, and she does this by choosing to access and embody the part of us that has never forgotten. The ways in which her research and teaching serve this purpose are continually evolving as she engages in conversation with that part, called guidance, which we shall learn about today. Pallavi has played a significant role in my Light Forest journey. We met as we share a common teacher, and I've learned a lot from her, and so I'm really, really delighted to have Pallavi on the show. Pallavi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. It's a formal introduction. Thank you.
Before we go anywhere, as we sort of stand on the edge of the forest, metaphorically, how are you this morning, and have you had your chai?
I did, but I'm a bit nervous. I generally have a little bit of stage anxiety or performance anxiety. It goes away in a bit, but yeah, it's kind of where I'm nervous, a little bit excited, a little bit curious as to what will emerge in this conversation.
Yeah, it's always nice to check in with the self before starting off one of these conversations. I always find it so interesting how the state of starting and then ending can be so different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take many paths in this forest, no doubt. And I'm filled with curiosity and also just a deep desire to learn. And I want to start off this question with a very simple one. What is guidance?
Oh, yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what it is, especially since guidance has started to play a kind of very, very, very significant role in my life. It's sort of always been there. It's always in the background. It's something that all of us have and all of us have experienced. You know, when you're playing a game of table tennis or you're going for a swim and you're in that state where there's nothing in your mind, and then suddenly this insight comes or this message comes or this realization happens. And so there are all these sort of ways in which we were encountering it in a sort of, I wouldn't say unconscious way, but not in a very sort of concerted effort to access it and understand it and develop a relationship with it. And I think that my sort of more conscious and intentional relationship with it started probably around, 2015 when I first started talking to our teacher, GD. But much more so from 2020, 2021 onwards, when my own commitment to to this voice and the role it has played in my life. And I've made some very, very difficult decisions with its support. And um, I realized what it is actually, what it is, and how listening to it, accessing it, asking it questions, making it my best friend is in my absolute best interest. You know, a lot of us, we get these insights and we realize and we get these messages and these downloads, but then there's a part of us that is so entangled in our world, in our relationships and our work and our beliefs about life and the meaning we give it. And it's so entangled in all of these things that the moment we hear this message, we're so reluctant to feel through it, to ask it, to genuinely be curious and have a relationship with it. So I came to understand that this part, which our teacher calls guidance, is, I like to call it the part of me that knows what I truly, truly want. The part of me that knows what I truly, truly want. And what all of us truly, truly want, I believe, at the core and our deepest level, is all of us want peace. All of us want that truth. And listening to this guidance and bringing it into your life and cultivating this relationship with it, for me, has been an experience in prioritizing peace, has been an experiencing in choosing that peace again and again and again, until I'm so certain that that is the only thing I want, and that is exactly what I want, and I don't want anything else. And it's sort of like guidance will take you through all sorts of experiences, help you meet all sorts of people, help you learn all sorts of things. And some of them can feel not so peaceful at times. Some of them can feel very messy, some of them, but all of them are to help you realize that this is what you truly, truly want. And that's the direction that you're heading in. So yeah, I kind of call it the part of me that knows what I truly, truly want. And I think in common parlance, the word intuition is used for it. Some people call it the higher self. And some people say it's the totality of you. It's the part of you that's so intelligent, that is connected to God, is connected to source. And so it forms this bridge, this communication bridge that is able to. So I see God or source as this sort of limitless, formless energy that has no beginning, has no end. And so in our mind is so used to limited thinking that we have only a limited number of words, a limited number of images, limited number of ways that we can use to describe, imagine, and formulate understanding. And so how do you understand something that is just, all that is so limitless? And so, there's this part of you that is able to do that translation work, that is connected to this source, that is able to, bring in its sense of knowing, its sense of being, its intelligence, and translate it to your mind that understands only a certain number of things, and translate it in a way that you're able to kind of have this bridge to source and that larger kind of energy, and have your realization and have that insight. And so I think that guidance is, to me, has become a very specific word over intuition or even over the higher self, because I feel like these words are used a lot in common contexts. Often intuition is sort of used interchangeably with instinct. It's not quite that. And some people who kind of maybe are trained in a very psychoanalytic tradition, we have this kind of exposure to psychometric tests that have this word intuition, and that means a very specific thing. It means being able to connect the dots, or create a pattern, or have insights to being able to connect different and disparate things very easily. So and do it at such a fast rate that it feels like it just sort of came to you and you just know. But that's more of a way of processing information than sort of accessing that part of you that is connected to source and that knows what you truly, truly want. So I feel like I've given you like a long-winded answer, but I've tried to describe something that is sort of hard to bring down into words.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think there are many layers that you just shared, and I think we'll over the course of this conversation we'll unpack a few of them. I think what stuck with me is your emphasis that intuition might be a starting point to think about it, but guidance is something much deeper, something that you, in your words, say you have a relationship with it, almost like it is a separate persona, but you can collaborate it with, you can converse with it, which sounds like far more than intuition, which I think when I often think about it, or when I hear people think about it, it's a feeling. It's maybe like an impulse you feel in your, maybe in your body somewhere, or an impulse that you feel like this is it, I should follow it. You also mentioned like bridge and translation between source and form, which I think is very interesting. Yeah, I think it would be nice, especially for listeners, to unpack like this almost like if you could draw a graph of like intuition to guidance. And I think since most of us are familiar with intuition, how guidance is, in some ways more complex, more present, more deeper, and how you've sort of start to cultivate that difference in between intuition and guidance.
Yeah, I think guidance is actually very, very simple, but we complicate it because our minds are so keen on, understanding and, knowing, and like, I need to figure this out. And it's not something that is figured out. It is something that exists when you've emptied yourself of all the desire to figure out, all the desire to know, all the desire to do. And you just sit there and you let that intelligence flow and speak and do its thing and just watch while it does its thing. And it sort of, as it flows and it does its thing, it sort of you start to embody it. It starts to become integrated within you. And it starts to become, it's that part of you that's always existed, but you never sort of like, it's like an organ that, you thought was just like an appendage, but it's actually a vital organ. And once you start like paying attention to it, you realize that it's running your entire body, your entire system, your entire life.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's intuition, at least the way I see it, is it's a way of processing information. When you kind of, let's say you want to become very good at art, and you keep practicing and you keep practicing and you keep practicing, and you learn all the skills of like color theory, alignment, and this and that. And then you practiced it so much that when you look at something, you intuitively know something's off or something has to be changed, or like this would look better. And so intuition is sort of where you've reached that point where you've processed all the information that you've gained through skill and practice, and reached that sort of almost level of mastery where you're able to like say, this is it or this isn't it. You have an innate gift or talent of processing information about people when you meet them. And so this might have come from conditioning or your parents, your past lives or whatever. But guidance is something that happens when you set yourself aside. And so it's not you, the personality, that's operating. It's when you say, hey, I don't know anything, I don't understand anything. And you just let that intelligence, you surrender to that intelligence and let that operate through you, and just watch it as it happens. And you realize that it's doing exactly what you wanted. It's doing it even better than what you thought you wanted. So it's sort of a practice of stepping back rather than, seeing it as there's this part of me that I need to like somehow get to.
So in a way, we could see intuition as sort of still slightly in a muddy space where there's a lot of competition between thoughts and between the mind with its desires and questions. And so there's this like cloudy space, and I'm certainly comfortable and familiar with that. And then in that space, sometimes we may feel what we talk about intuition, but guidance is like when that cloudiness starts to clear up a little bit.
Yes, it only operates when there's no cloud. It's subtle and it's sensitive. It sort of and it's very precise.
Mm.
And it's sort of, it's something that's there. And if, you already have your preconceived ideas about how a situation should go, then it's hard to see through that cloud, because that itself is the cloud.
Yeah.
Your preconceived notion is the cloud. And so once you let go of how you think a situation should be, then guidance is free to operate.
I feel like you've just put your finger on a very important, tension point. At least certainly for me, where oftentimes, I might try to bring in guidance or even think about, just let's even say intuition, try to move away from this thinking rational mind and move away from that. But somewhere there's almost a corrupting process where I am still trying to get this intuitive insight in service of this goal that I've decided, like, should I work with this person? Should I take this project? Should I do this? So many of these, either big or small decisions. And there's this feeling that the mind is too busy, the rational mind is just not working out. Like, let me look for something deeper. Let me look for what I really want. As you said, like, guidance is that coming from that part of place that really, really knows what you truly want. But this corrupting process happens. And for you're saying very clearly is that guidance only operates when this cloudiness has moved away. And that, I think that's really interesting to emphasize.
Yeah, I think there's no harm in asking guidance for anything in your life. You can ask it like what TV you should buy, what clothes you should wear, whether you should go out today, whether you should meet this friend. Like, you can ask it all of these questions. There's no harm. But I think in the process of asking these questions, the good thing about asking the questions is at least you're starting to make a concerted effort to have a relationship with it. That's where your relationship is beginning, because you don't really know this part yet, right? You're discovering it through the process of engaging with it. So the fact that you're asking questions is great. Like, if anyone's watching, they want to ask questions, ask, because that's where you begin and you're understanding how it works. And then it's sort of like small changes will start to happen. You'll start to see differences. You'll start to see that your relationships feel more harmonious. You'll feel like there's more kind of general stability in your life. You'll start to see these small things, and then you'll reach a sort of inflection point with that relationship where it itself will teach you and show you that that style of questioning is sort of limited, and what it's there for is much bigger than that. So I ask it a range of all kinds of questions, right from like, should I wash my hair today to what should I be doing with my life? And if I'm getting the instruction not to ask questions, see, because I'm open to hearing anything that it has to offer, from an answer to, yeah, you should, you shouldn't, to wait, it's unclear, to, anything under the sun. I'm willing to listen to any answer that it has. And so when it gives me a response that I did not expect, now I'm not as surprised by it. But earlier I used to be. I would think that, guidance knows everything and it has to have all the answers, and it would just keep giving it to me. Yeah, keep giving it to me. And, somehow the push for that type of relationship came from the need to keep fixing something in my life. So I either felt like something was wrong, or I needed to succeed, or this thing had to work out. And there would be so much pressure that I would be putting on guidance. And it's not like I would always get distorted or wrong answers. When you push guidance, sometimes you get a kind of answer that works, and sometimes you can get a lot of distortion. Because your own kind of thoughts are sort of mixing and you're not really hearing correctly and stuff. But a lot of times that happens when the internal kind of motivation towards whatever I'm doing is coming from either a sense of worthlessness or a desire to fix something or a desire to push. And once I notice myself doing that, then I sort of take a step back and I clear that and I process it. And sometimes I just leave guidance alone. Because when I know that I am motivated in a particular direction and there's some part of me that's attached to the outcome of that, and then it's not fair to bring in guidance because I'm saying I want this to happen this way. So I might as well kind of be honest with myself, admit it to myself. And if I want, just go ahead and do it and see what happens as a result of that. Instead of asking guidance, is this right? Is this wrong? And then if guidance gives me an answer and I go ahead and do it and I didn't like the outcome, then I'll go back and I'll kind of have a word with guidance and be angry with it. So it's I think one of the most challenging relationships that I've chosen to cultivate in my life. And I think the most beautiful one. The most beautiful one.
Wow. So, I mean, why would you say, I mean, you just said it's one of the most beautiful relationships. So in some ways that is your answer, but maybe unpack that a little bit more. Like, why would people want to start to build this relationship with guidance? Like, why is it that, making these everyday decisions or big decisions from this like rational thinking mind, perhaps a big source of a lot of the frustration, anxiety, and depression that we might face in life?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, even in a lot of the new age spiritual circles, or anyone who kind of has an understanding of the higher self or the intuition or guidance, starts off, like we said, asking about everyday things. Then they start to ask about spiritual things, and they ask information about other planets and deities and this and that. And so we are kind of, it's still in some ways continuing to employ guidance to do something for us rather than be employed by guidance for the purpose of something much higher that even our mind can't conceive of. So what is in our highest good, what is the best thing that's in store for us, none of us know. And so I would rather be employed by that intelligence and be led by it in a direction than employ it to suit my needs and to suit what I think my purpose should be. And I think that's the fundamental issue. And so I say it's a beautiful relationship because we kind of start from this place where we employ it to shifting to, and with a little bit of wisdom, with a good teacher, with good companions on the path, shift to being employed by it. And that means letting a lot of yourself go, letting a lot of your thoughts about reality, thoughts about success, thoughts about your value in the world, thoughts about your image and your identity in the world. It means letting all of that go. And that's not easy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when we see that there is this real world and this is how it works, we are compelled to, question why am I letting go of this identity? Why am I letting go of the I? Why am I letting go of something that helps me operate in the world, that helps me make money, that helps me, earn, like get achievements, get some success? Why do I want to let that go? And so guidance will always take you to that point where you ask that question. What is the value that you see in holding on to this belief or this identity? And why do you not want to let it go? And when you truly see that the reason you're holding on to it is actually making you unhappy rather than happy, you will automatically let it go. But until then, you are believing that somewhere I still want success. I still want my image. I still want my beauty. I still want my body. And I don't want to let it go. And you think that the moment that happens, I get the perfect body, I have the perfect marriage, I have the perfect work life. The moment that happens, then I'll reach, like, I'll
That's
be
the
happy.
moment we're waiting for, right? I mean, everything is building up for that. The moment
Yeah.
that I have this
Yeah.
perfect house, perfect relationship, the perfect bank balance, like
Yeah.
that's when I've arrived, and that's when, life has
Yeah.
really, I've made it.
Yeah. And if and guidance will keep bringing you to the question of, is this what truly makes you happy? Is this what happiness is? And it will, if you choose to access it and if you choose to talk to it, it will keep bringing you to that question and keep bringing you to really see the value of these things in your life, the actual value. Does it actually make you happy? And does it actually, contribute to peace? Does it actually contribute to that? And if you're able to see through that belief and see through that aspect and see that it's actually not giving you any peace, if anything, it's making you even more nervous, it's making you afraid, it's making you doubt yourself, making you compete with everyone around you, it's making you suspicious of everyone around you. If you're able to see that, then you'll automatically let this identity go, and guidance will be free to flow in and do that work for you. And so there will be instances where like people will leave your life or you lose a job or whatever. And this is guidance saying that like this is not making you happy. This is not true value. This is not of any benefit to you. And it's trying to make you see that in a kind of almost a desperate way. It doesn't do any of these extreme things like take away a job or whatever, unless, you kind of had blinders on and you kept going. Because it's always talking to you. It's always sending a message. It's always communicating with you. But if you've had, shut your ears and if you've had blinders on and you kept walking, then suddenly like a person leaves or, your job goes away or you like lost money, then that's guidance saying like, look, you've been chasing this and you think this is where your happiness lies and that is where your value is, but it is of no value to you. So it's going to make your life tough but easier at the same time. On the outside, on the outer end of it, like your ego will go through a roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, this point you just made of you think you know what you want. And so much of your inquiry, you're talking about, examining that. Is this what I really want? Is this career or is this job or is this relationship giving me the happiness or giving me what I want? And I can certainly reflect on my own journey and often feeling like so much of what I think I want is just embedded in me, and when I'm exploring that or in pursuit of that, it feels like that's me, and this is what I want. Like, what do you mean this is not what I want? What do you mean getting this promotion or getting a PhD is not what I want? Inquiry there comes in, and guide me through then how more into this question of inquiry into belief systems and into how, as you've just put it so clearly, it's letting go really and opening up the space to surrender and to let go of these maybe limiting beliefs that allow us to. So guide me through that inquiry and how that's worked out for you.
I think there are several techniques for inquiry. And I think fundamentally it is if you have a good set of questions with you and a good practice of those questions more than anything else, then whenever, you can sense that there's some discomfort in your mind or in your body or in a particular situation, that there's some level of awareness that at least at the level of like something about this makes me uncomfortable. You can even start there for the most basic person. It's, in a Course in Miracles, there's a statement that says, at least I can acknowledge that this does not feel good. And that is a good starting point to say, perhaps I need to see this differently. So this is the acknowledgement that we begin with, which is, at least I can say, look, whatever about this doesn't feel good. And maybe I should see this differently. And this could be, you're angry with someone, something didn't go well, and you're really upset and disappointed. And it doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable. And that's the first thing that you can acknowledge. And an addition to this acknowledgement is if you feel more open and you feel more willing, you can say, I don't actually know how to see this situation. That's why I'm uncomfortable. I don't really understand what's happening. I'm not really sure of who I am, what I should be doing, what I should be saying. And really acknowledge that you don't know. You don't know what's happening. You don't know why the other person shouted at you or why you lost your temper. You don't know. So just become open and willing to acknowledge that I don't feel good and I don't really know or understand what's happening. And whatever way I'm seeing it right now is not helping me. And I want to see this differently. That's the basic acknowledgement that I think all of us can do and all of us can begin with.
Yeah.
And, this starts with situations that are uncomfortable. But as you practice and you start seeing that, hey, I seem to have a very fixed point of view, let's say about this water bottle, you can do the same acknowledgement. Because the moment there is a fixed point of view, as you become deeper and deeper into this acknowledgement and this practice of awareness, every fixed point of view will start to feel like a pressure in your system. And that itself will start, you'll feel it. There'll be a sensory sort of visceral reaction. So initially, it's just the larger things, There's probably like a friend you don't like, or, your relationship with your father is strained. And it'll feel like these are the larger things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But as you become slowly more and more aware, it'll come down to any fixed point of view, anything that creates a lot of definition and solidity and compression will start to feel uncomfortable. And you use the same acknowledgement there. At least I can say that this does not feel comfortable. I don't really know how to operate, what to think, what to say, how to feel. And I want help to see this differently. So that's when guidance is like, okay, I can come in now because this person has said, look, I don't want to see this situation the way I've been seeing it for so long. I want to see it differently. So this acknowledgement is the basic practice to bring in guidance. And then you can use inquiry to question your fixed point of view. To question, let's say you are angry with someone and you think that they've wronged you. Inquiry is used to process that belief. So we can use the Byron Katie process that you also use and are quite familiar with, and start with a simple question of, is it true that they've wronged you? And so that's one inquiry technique.
Yeah.
And the other technique which we've also learned from our teacher is like, what is the value or the benefit of believing in this thought or having this fixed point of view? What is the value in it? And, there are like a number of questions that, you have like a little question bank. The other question, which is one of my favorites, is what is this for?
Yeah.
So if I'm going out to meet a friend, what is it for?
Yeah.
And I ask that question, what is it for, probably 3 or 4 times until I get to the basis of my motivation.
Yeah.
And then with awareness, I can continue to proceed with the activity, but at least I know that it could be that there is a belief that's driving me. At least I am aware that that's what is driving me. So inquiry practices, I think, come to process or challenge the fixed point of view that you have about the situation. And guidance comes in when you kind of really participate in acknowledging that you don't know.
Yeah, thank you for sharing these inquiry questions. I think what's also so striking about them is they're kind of questions you can bring in your day to day.
Yeah.
You don't need to be some spiritually connected person, or you don't need to be some energetically,
Right.
a very connected person. You can start playing with them with even your rational mind, or your conscious mind, which is what we have as a tool that we're most familiar with.
Yes. Yeah, I think the thing I like about inquiry is that it's accessible to all. Whether you have a relationship to spirituality, whether you are interested in exploring energy or any of these things, you don't need an interest in those things to be able to ask very simple questions of yourself and really question your beliefs. I think all inquiry is driven by a desire to find the truth. It's as simple as that. And when you've had enough of lies, when you've had enough of the stories that you've told yourself about the world, when you've had enough of how you see that everything around you is kind of made up.
Yeah.
You give it a name, you give it meaning, and you give it a role in your life, and then suddenly it becomes a story.
Yeah.
And over time, it's now attached to you, and it becomes this part of you. And now you really have to struggle to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so when you've had enough of that, and you're like, I'm done, I want the truth,
Yeah.
and you're driven by that motivation, then inquiry is a great tool.
Yeah.
Because you can question everything and anything and get to the bottom of it if you're willing to really take your mind that far.
Yeah. And also with inquiry, what's so clear from what you're saying is that it's really, it's you, it's me. Like the tool is there. It's not dependent on any external situation, really. It's just really about us having that conviction, that choice to say, is it true? Can I question why is it that I think this way?
Yeah. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about inquiry is that it's at the end of the day, whether it's guidance, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's inquiry, whether it's, energetic hygiene, all of these things are fundamentally a choice. They're a decision. And so and with inquiry especially, all of these things work and it's just so counterintuitive, right? Like you feel like in order to be very spiritual, you need to read a lot of books and understand non-duality and like memorize a few Ramana Maharishi quotes and like there's that pressure.
Yeah.
Like the moment you maybe had an experience and then you're in a spiritual community, it's like everyone is like, oh, I do so much yoga in a day and I do this, Joe Dispenza meditation and I'm on the 7th level of consciousness. You start hearing all these terms. It's a new world that you enter into. But truth is something that is not dependent on any terms. And so you don't need any theory, any philosophy, any specific kind of, lineage, training. You don't need any of that to inquire. In fact, it is better off that you don't have that to inquire, because at least your inquiry is curious and true and not clouded by the weight of what Buddha said or this one said, because truth is in your direct experience of this moment, your direct experience of this moment. And so it doesn't matter what word you remember of which enlightened master. In this moment, it is only in your direct experience. And so the questions are just tools to lead you back into your direct experience of this moment.
Yeah, and I think most of us just operating, in default mode, which is not inquiring and simply just doing and following our impulses. And as we bring in inquiry and as we sort of look into or learn more about spirituality, I can certainly relate to this feeling of still looking for an answer outside. Maybe
Yeah.
looking for a better belief, maybe looking for like a teaching that feels like it'll help me get what I want, which was not working out before. But what's clear, and also going back to what you mentioned about guidance, comes in when the water starts to become clear, as you don't have to replace a belief with another belief or replace one teaching with another teaching. It's more about experiencing this moment, experiencing directly yourself, and that doesn't require a belief. This is something I've often sometimes I struggle for myself, and sometimes I struggle also speaking to people, because there's this feeling that like you have to believe something. If you don't believe it, then how will you be a kind person? Like you have to believe that you need to be a kind person. And this feeling that what I'm hearing you say is really about like, it's not about replacing one belief with another, but it's really about like letting go beliefs and seeing what shows up for you.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, truth is at the place where there are no thoughts and no beliefs.
Yeah.
And so the practice of sitting in that truth and resting in that truth comes from disconnecting from or suspending thoughts and beliefs. And so if you are able to do that, the reason we practice meditation is because we gain a certain level of distance from our thoughts and beliefs and create space. And so there's no harm in actually replacing a belief with a better belief. But the fundamental practice first is truth. And when that spaciousness comes, guidance itself will lead you to the better belief to replace it with. And that's a sort of, it's kind of useful way of operating in the world, because see, when I'm expressing to you, I need to use words, and I'm kind of sounding like, there is some conviction, right? And so I'm using thought and I'm using word and I'm using all of these things. But they are employed by an intelligence that is higher than me. So it's not I am employing them. It's the same thing as before. And so there's no problem in, like, let's say these, you used to think that whatever, you used to think something and then now you have a better thought, a better way of thinking about it. That's absolutely fine. But even that better thought, at some point, the ego is very clever. And so it can take up that better thought and it can be like, see, I have this better thought. And all these people around me don't have this better thought. Or it can be like, I have this better thought, and so I should operate this way and I shouldn't operate that way. And so it can take this lovely, lovely, most beautiful sounding thought and use it for its own agenda.
Like, I have guidance. Yeah.
Use it to put pressure on yourself, attack others.
Yeah.
It can use it for all of those things, which is why coming back to peace, coming back to truth is the most important thing. Because that is where that's where all the answers are. Yeah. That's where you kind of are able to go within and realize the answers are all from within. And you're not seeking answers from anywhere outside. And then, so it becomes this energetic space that you embody. And as you go in the world, you probably like see, some sort of thought system or belief. Hey, actually, that's kind of interesting. And so you will approach it with curiosity and wonder and a kind of restfulness rather than a pushiness. Sometimes when we're desperately searching for a better system or a better way of thinking, it's almost like when we look at it, either we want to try and grab it or we are repulsed by it. So when we sense that extreme reaction, we know that we're not embodying that space of peace. When we're embodying that space of peace, whatever that we're seemingly looking for or want, as we are going through life, we'll encounter it. And it'll come in a very sort of restful, it'll kind of make you curious and delighted, but in a very, very peaceful and restful way than in this sort of aggressive, like for it, against it kind of way. And that's when there's this sort of internal barometer that you can cultivate to know that, hey, this is where I feel like maybe I'm slightly out of integrity or out of alignment. And I need to get back to truth and peace and get back to that space where guidance is operating through me rather than me operating to service my agenda.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought this up, and this is something I definitely struggle with. Certainly sometimes confused, like, is that the ego speaking or is this guidance speaking? Or sometimes to feel that, I have guidance and therefore the spiritual ego almost kicks in to create a sense of superiority, create a sense of like, I'm special, I'm different. How did you start to distinguish that voice of what's the voice of guidance and what's not? And how you start to sense into that space that allows you to know that when you're out of integrity and you need to come back?
Yeah, I think simple things that you can sense are, one is there's a lot of pressure versus restfulness. So when you see that there is some level of anxiety or pressure, that the mind is filled with thoughts, and all of these thoughts sound very interesting. They sound very insightful. They sound like great ideas. But then there's a pressure that you have to either act on this thought or, if you don't act on this thought, like you're going to forget it. Like all of this is pressure.
Like a life and death kind of feeling, like something needs to happen.
Yeah,
like,
that you're going to lose something if this doesn't happen. So it's pressure and restfulness. That's one kind of sensory experience. The other sensory experience is busyness versus slowness.
Okay.
So you will find that the moment the ego is operating, there will be the thoughts will just keep coming at you one after another. And, they will sound very compelling, that you need to have this thought right now. You have to have it. And it'll keep making you busy. So there'll be like one thing after another, and you'll feel compelled. You'll feel drawn and to be busy. Whereas guidance, it'll kind of come when you're very, very, very slow, when you've kind of brought a sense of slowness to everything. And this is why we do a lot of these awareness practices, right? Like when we're doing something mindfully, it is actually slowing the mind down. When we slow it down and we pause, and we're able to kind of create that distance and actually see what's happening. When we are busy, we become a lot more blind and we're not able to see what's happening, and things are just happening chaotically.
Yeah.
So those are I would say, like, sensory experience wise, these are sort of the two primary indicators that and this is something that anyone can easily identify.
Yeah.
When they've become very, very busy, whether it's in their life or in their mind, and when there's a lot of pressure, whether it's in their life or in their mind, because their life is simply reflecting what the mind thinks. So if your life is putting a lot of pressure on you, that means that, like, somewhere in your mind that there are these beliefs that there's a whole kind of operating system that's running, it's drawing your attention to that. So sensory experience wise, this is one way to really distinguish whether the ego is operating or you're much more in a space of like accessing spirit and guidance. But in terms of the voice itself, it's the voice of the ego, 90% of the time, if you distill it, it'll sound like I know. It will sound like that. Or I know, I'm special, I'm different. And the other end that it'll sound like is I'm worthless, I'm a failure, nobody should love me, I should be condemned. So these are the two, it knows only two flavors, vanilla, chocolate. So it will
I choose
take you
chocolate.
the specialness. So it'll choose specialness. I know, I'm better. I need to tell you what to do. You need to listen to me. And it'll choose the other. I'm worthless. Nobody can love me. I need to just dig a hole and bury myself. These are the two main voices. So when you know that these voices are operating, again, it's
Which
the
is
ego.
90% of the time.
Yeah. So we kind of jump from one polarity to the other.
Yeah.
And guidance doesn't sound like that at all. It's very, very straightforward. It just tells it as it is. And you know that that's what it's saying, or that's how it's saying, when you see the people around you reacting very neutrally, very peacefully. But when you're in either of these polarities, you'll see that they'll reinforce one or the other. So if you feel very special, they can either try to bring you down, bring you off your pedestal, or they will project and make you even bigger than you are. So the people around you are a good indicator for which of these are happening.
Is guidance ever unkind?
No. You can think that guidance is unkind, and that will happen in your journey, because guidance will make you sometimes do things that you're like, this doesn't sound right at all. And it'll make you say things and you're like, that doesn't sound right at all. But if it's truly coming from guidance, it's truly coming from that space, it's never unkind. Guidance is only kind. In fact, it can't be anything but kind. It's a very, very gentle voice. It's a very sensitive voice. See, because the whole aspect, the whole point of guidance is to take you away from this fear-based programming of the ego to peace, right? And if guidance is unkind, it's only going to make you more fearful. Even if it's stern, it's going to be kind. It's like our teacher, right? Like, he can like be stern, but it's always loving and it's always kind. And guidance is a very, very similar voice. It's always kind. And so sometimes it might sound a little sharp, but a week later you will realize that, oh, like, it was right all along, and it said it so kindly. And if I am, making it a monster, it's in my head.
Yeah, I think that's so important to emphasize again, because as you just articulated, so much of our thoughts are just this very speedy, fast paced, frantic, like a thought and then another thought comes up right after it. It might tell you, have the coffee, don't have the coffee, in like 4 different ways. It might push you. And
Yeah.
what I hear is this feeling of slowing down. You mentioned the pause, which I also find as a very useful practice of
Yeah.
just in between tasks. Our teacher GD is also, I think, one of the first protocols he mentioned to me was just practice a pause after finishing something or before starting something. And that it creates that liminal space where you get to carve out for yourself to really question, again, bring in that inquiry you talked about of, is this what I truly want? Whether it's jumping onto Instagram or onto email, like what am I looking for? Getting into that space before jumping in, because I think also a lot of people sometimes, maybe some people listening in might feel like, but the world is busy. I need to do 10 things. I might have a company. I might be taking care of family. I might be hyper involved in a lot of ventures. And so I need to be busy and fast paced. And when you're telling me to slow down, it's almost like you're saying, give up all these things you're doing, and, be slow and sit down. I think there's a subtle difference here, which is that it's not so much about trying to, again, change the world around you. It's more about slowing your system down and then making those decisions from that space.
Yeah, I mean, see, again, that kind of busy life means that somewhere you lost that contact in terms of prioritizing peace, right? So you're saying you want a busy life, but your system will tell you that you want peace, whether you like it or not.
It's always
So,
going to choose peace.
yeah, your system will choose peace. And so, see, working with guidance is about working smarter, not about working harder. And so, for example, like if I have to write a journal article or whatever, and normally like I might spend a month or two agonizing about it. And every day, it'll be like, let me set a writing schedule and write 300 words per day and whatnot, whatnot, whatnot. And this is, I'm creating a system, I'm creating a routine, I'm creating a way, like it's so much pressure, it's so much pushing. And if you let guidance in, like sometimes I've written things in like half an hour. And, it'll spend days just not letting me do anything except for doing clearings or bringing more awareness or sitting in contemplation. Sometimes it'll make me spend a week doing that. And then it'll make me spend 2 days just writing this thing that I need to finish. So it knows when is the appropriate time. It knows when or it knows how. If you trust it, it will get everything done.
Yeah.
Instead of you agonizing about it. So even if your life is busy, hand it over to guidance. Just say, I have all these things and I am not sure. It's like, that basic acknowledgement. This makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. And I would like to see this differently. And I would like your help. You start with this acknowledgement and you give it over. Then you're basically saying, okay, I don't want to do it this way. Even if I have like 10 things to do, you probably have a way that is better and that will create more space and more peace in my life. And so that's what I want. And that's what you're choosing.
It's about working smarter, not harder. I feel like this might be the most LinkedIn segment of our
Well,
conversation.
I try to make it sound relatable.
No, I feel you, and I mean, I think it's also important to to say. I mean, I read out your bio at the start, like you were a startup founder, designer. You did your PhD, writing academic pieces, working at ANU and in Australia, and just doing so many roles. And it's not, again, I feel like, and certainly my mind sometimes creates this separation of doing guidance and living with guidance means I'm just going to, as you said, always just be in peace, meaning like not engage with the world. And basically, like the image that comes up to me is like I'm just rejecting relationships, I'm rejecting jobs, I'm rejecting money, I'm rejecting like all of these comforts because that's not peace. But what's so clear and what's so powerful about what I'm hearing is that it's about bringing guidance and collaboration into all these engagements that you're doing, and you're actually finding able to work through these. Typically a PhD, right, all these are very stressful stressful parts of our lives is to actually smoothen those edges and to actually like bring that peace into your day-to-day moments.
Yeah, if that's what you're meant to be doing in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
If you're meant to be doing a PhD and guidance has guided you to that, then it'll help you out.
Yeah.
If you're meant to be doing something else and you're like, no, help me write this article, it's going to take you in a different direction. But I think that this thing of like the interesting thing you bring up is, feeling like if I'm in contemplation and in peace and, doing my spiritual work all the time, I'll sort of become this recluse and, shun the world and like not engage in it at all. And I would say for me, the opposite has happened from like struggling with, social anxiety and generally not being like extroverted and all these things and, sharing at times a difficult relationship with friends and family. It has brought me to situations where I have transformed all the important relationships to a place where I feel comfortable, I feel loving, I feel peaceful with them, I feel neutral. And that people think that neutrality means feeling lessness. But it's a sort of beautiful feeling. It's neither, ecstatic nor is it, sort of depressive. It's a beautiful feeling. You see a leaf and you feel wonder and you feel joy, but you're not like marrying the leaf. So it's there's a sense of wonder, curiosity, beauty, and joy in everything, and you see everything new and you see everything fresh all the time when you operate in guidance. Because the fun thing that I like about guidance is I learn something every day. There's something new every day.
Wow.
And I might see the same person, I might be in the same situation, but if I ask guidance, it'll give me a completely different perspective on it. It'll give me a completely different reason for why I was there, or why I am the way I am. So I feel like with guidance, I expanding and learning and becoming something new every day, and so it's fun.
Well, there's now that we've walked this path deep into Guidance Lake, shall we call it, and now we can sort of pause and sit down and look around at the view. Thanks for really going deep into topics that are not easy to explain, and also share in your own experience in your own life how you've been bringing it in, how it's not always been joy and bliss, how you've also had so many moments where you felt uncomfortable, you felt perhaps that fear of losing control, but ultimately over time this relationship has grown. And I think that's what's also maybe important, and certainly for me to remember, is that it's a seed growing into a plant and then a tree. You can't expect it to give you that instant shade and fruit day one. And that is sometimes also this feeling of maybe these conditions of modern culture where we're always looking for that instant gratification, the instant answer. But it's a patient relationship that you built up over time. If you could, maybe the final thing of like how would you describe your relationship from the start with it to where it's reached now, and what would you say to people who are starting out today?
I think it started, I would say, like, I spoke about it at the beginning, which is like chance encounters, random insights. So I knew that there was some part of me that was very intelligent, that was constantly operating, but I kind of did not choose to consciously act to have a relationship with it. And I would say that sort of relationship only began in 2020, where I started small practices. One is like, of course, in conversation with our teacher and with his help. But I would, I would do these meditations where I would have a lot of truth and have a lot of peace and that sense of restfulness. And then I would receive these insights maybe a little bit after the meditation or towards the end of the meditation. And what I would do is I would write it down. And so I started writing down dreams. I started writing down any random insights. It sort of became almost like a practice of solidifying guidance in my life, as well as giving that sense of respect and reverence rather than treating it as a fleeting thought. So whenever you have an insight or you have vivid dreams and stuff, like I encourage people to write it down because that helps you develop your relationship with it. And then, of course, start asking questions. It's easier to start with asking yes or no questions, like, should I drink this coffee? Yes or no? And give it options, because right now your mind is not ready to handle like anything, just anything that comes in. It'll get there, but to train it initially, like let's say you have to go to a coffee shop, give it a few options. Be like, should I go to X, Y, or Z? And then once you start feeling strongly towards, so it can come in different ways. Maybe you'll see a visual, maybe you'll feel like a strong sense towards one thing, maybe you'll hear a sound. But ask the question and then wait for the answer. Don't try to push your answer onto it. Ask the question and then wait, and then an answer will come, and it'll come usually in these ways. There'll be a strong sense towards something, or you will see it as a vision, or you will hear it, or you will just know. There'll be like a sense of knowing. So these are ways to kind of practice and cultivate. So give it a few options whenever you ask it a question, and start with small things. And then when you're moving on to larger decisions, you can, again, do the same thing. Start with yes or no, or give it 2 or 3 options. And then, progress from there. And then once you start talking to it, you will have your own way of communicating with it. And that will be unique to you. But yeah, like I would say I started with all of these sorts of things. And once I started seeing that, like, it felt like my entire life was going to be turned upside down. I was like, oh my God, like I have been operating blind until now. And there's this thing that can see way beyond me that is there and that's helping me out. And initially it was like excitement and passion and all of that was driving me. And then, of course, I was in the sort of last stages of the PhD. I was writing up my thesis in the last 6 months. And at that time, I struggled a little bit because like I felt like withdrawing from guidance and just like focusing on the job that needed to be done. And I had a kind of, moments of disconnection, moments of avoiding it, being like, no, 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 don't tell me. I don't want to hear what you have to say, because if it takes me away from this job, then I might lose something. Again, like you said, fear of losing control. But perhaps it would have made it better. And the only way I could find out was through having this sense of disconnection and realizing that I would have been better off with it in my life rather than without it. So that will happen. That's part of the process. It's not going to be, and you'll get angry with it because it'll tell you to do something. It'll be like, yeah, go and meet this person. And you'll have the most horrid experience with them. And you'll be like, why did you ask me to go and meet this person? And you'll be angry with it and be like, you made me do this thing and it didn't turn out well. And you'll turn your back. You'll be angry with it. You'll feel bad that things didn't work out the way you wanted it to. And then you'll avoid it again. And then you'll go back to it again when you get a little more sense. So all of these ups and downs.
Why do you think he would have sent you to meet this person that you then have this horrid conversation with?
It's happened in so many different ways. One was like, there was like some sort of pending past life karma that I needed to work out with that person. So I just had to have that kind of interaction. It's very simple. And then after that, I'm cleared of it and it's all good. Or there was something that person had to reflect about what I was thinking that only they could do. So it's always a gift. That's the thing to remember about guidance, that it is always a gift, even if you don't see it that way.
Yeah.
So a useful statement is everything that's happening in this moment is in my highest good. It can't happen any other way. It can only happen this way. And so once that sort of sense of acknowledgement comes, then you start seeing more clearly why that.
Yeah, it can only be this way. Yeah. Yeah. So you've been using guidance in many ways. And I'm also struck often as I operate in different worlds and I see a world where in some ways we are going for more automation, more data, sort of trying to understand in a very quantifiable, empirical way, as especially in perhaps relation to health. I know that's an area where you have a lot of expertise as a medical anthropologist, but perhaps in your own life as a practitioner, bringing guidance into this. Yeah, maybe this would be a good time to share a little bit on perhaps how you see guidance in relationship to health. And maybe we can also reflect on a little bit on these, like this trend of data and empirical approaches versus what you described, which is, really about this inner wisdom that can't really be measured in any form.
Yeah, see, I think fundamentally sickness begins in the mind. That's the starting point for all of it. And it is a belief in the mind that is projected onto the body. And so what is manifesting as a physical thing actually began as an energetic thing, moved into an emotional thing, and then became a physical thing. So if we understand this sort of process of how something that is a little more amorphous became defined, it's because that belief that sort of was a little more kind of nascent and a little more amorphous, but existed, which we didn't look at and didn't process, became a little more solidified and then a little more solidified. So guidance, like in any aspect of life, you can ask it questions about your body and your health and all of those things. And it all comes down to the same thing, that there are beliefs in your system that are creating these patterns in your body that you want to release. And so here, guidance will sort of, if you ask it the right questions and with the right intention, it can do everything from guiding you to the right doctor, guiding you to take the right measurements. So it's not like guidance is against measurement, or it is in the right way. It will take you to the right kind of doctor, the right form of measurement, the right tools that you need
As
to
you
heal
said
yourself.
earlier, it's a bridge. It can be a translation tool between, this
Yeah.
this conscious reality and your
Yeah, yeah.
inner world.
So if you need a surgery, it will take you to the surgeon. But if you need a naturopath, it will take you to the naturopath. If you need an energy healer, it will take you to an energy healer. So that's the thing about remaining open to where it takes you. If you're like, no, 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 I believe in like empirical, standardized, randomized control trial based medicine, if you're like that, then, again, you put pressure on where it should take you. But if you're open and you're willing and you're saying, look, I don't know what I need, but you know what I need, take me to the right place or find me the right thing. So it will do that. In my kind of situations, I've sort of, I think, benefited most in terms of in these ways. I think because I've been trained in sort of a health science and have a little bit of a health based background and a little bit of training in some healing modalities and stuff. The way guidance will sort of direct me is it'll direct me to a particular Bach flower remedy or a homeopathic medicine that I need to take on that day, or it will, take me to a book that will lead me to a specific insight about the biochemistry of the body and how that one part of me is sort of stuck, that one molecule or that one compound. Like it can take you in all sorts of ways. I think that the thing here is, like, currently, like you said, there's this drive towards breaking the body down into discrete, measurable components, right? Whether it's like, measuring your calorie intake or like how many nutrients go in a specific meal, to like, all sorts of measurements from your blood pressure, your heart rate, and this and that and that. And moving from, checking it once in a while, probably when you go to the doctor, to like almost constantly monitoring it, whether it's through devices like using that ring, or a continuous glucose monitoring device. And there are these apps where you log your activity. And so there's a push to create some sort of measurable way in which I can track progress. And there's no harm in that. There's no harm in that. In fact, in some ways, it actually helps people become a little more intuitive, because what they were completely unaware of, they're at least bringing some awareness to. So something that they didn't measure before, like, maybe they were just eating abundantly and now they're controlling their portions. So in some way, like, life is forcing them to bring a little bit more awareness to that aspect of their life. Now, there's always the danger of it sort of going to the extreme where measurements sort of govern, define, and then rule your life. And so then you're afraid, like, what if one day, I eat 500 more calories and then I have to burn it the next day? And then you're basically playing with calculations in your mind constantly. So I think measuring is useful provided it brings awareness. But if it's, again, creating a lot of pressure, it probably means that there is some aspect of you that is, again, afraid to lose control and that has projected it onto the measurement system. So I think personally for me, like I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia a while back. And in conventional sort of biomedical sort of practice, it's generally seen as a pain perception problem. So it's related to the nervous system and a neurological condition. And it's basically, they kind of characterize it as the body is not able to sense pain correctly. So even if there isn't a lot of pain, it's sort of triggering a pain response. Fibromyalgia is generally, there's like generalized pain, and then there are certain points in the body that they check for whether they hurt or not. And so if there are, I think, more than 12 points out of the 18 that are painful, then you're given a fibromyalgia diagnosis. So there's no actual clinical way of determining, like you can't take a diagnostic test to determine whether you have fibromyalgia. And so the last time I kind of had this diagnosis, they gave me painkillers, they gave me antidepressants, they gave me a bunch of things just to be able to manage the pain. And I reacted very badly to that medication. And I think that's sort of part of my journey of like understanding, that, and taking some sort of brave calls on saying that this medicine doesn't work for me. And I don't want to take something or put something in my body when it's reacting to it badly. Like I was getting a lot of skin issues and the pain was not really going away. And, then I started kind of at that point in time working with my diet and then cutting out things. And I figured out that gluten was a huge trigger. So then it sort of went into remission for a while. And then last year the fibromyalgia flared up again. And this time I was sort of determined to kind of get to the bottom of it, like the root cause of it. And again, not not take for granted the information that is offered me. And, this is sort of controversial, right? Because we're generally trained to see a medical practitioner as someone who is extremely knowledgeable and someone who we should trust when it comes to our health. And that's absolutely right. Like, there's nothing wrong about that. But at the same time, coming from my spiritual training, like when someone says something is uncurable, and when someone says something is chronic, or when someone says, so these sorts of things get me thinking. Because to me, these are limited ways of believing reality. Like, these are limited ways of seeing the world. And so the moment you say something is not possible, or something is going to be this way forever, or something is going to, harm you forever, and then sort of my curiosity, that part of my mind kicks in. And I tend
The
to question.
phenomenologist in you.
I'm just sort of curious because I think that I just don't, while I respect the perspective, I don't want to take it for granted that that's the only way that things happen. And so I think here is where my spiritual kind of practice and my relationship with guidance sort of becomes a huge part of this, because in spirituality, you're trained to question your fixed points of view and question limiting beliefs. So anything that you feel is limiting you, your mind, your reality, is immediately, to me, it creates pressure in my system. So when someone says, no, this is it, you need to take this medicine forever, and you need to be on this forever and that forever, and this is not curable and nothing is going to change. And to me, that's a limiting belief. That's like, okay, you are limited to this. And so my job is to at least question it. I don't have to take it at face value.
Inquiry again.
Yeah, inquiry. And your inquiry will lead you to, doing clearings and, understanding where the beliefs lie in your subconscious mind. And so, especially with fibromyalgia, while there was a physical aspect to this illness that I was, working with, and I was taking Ayurveda and I was taking homeopathy and I was doing all of that, there's a probably, proportional or even higher amount of work that inner work that was being done, which is looking at the beliefs, clearing my kind of subconscious patterning in this space, which was largely to do with, wanting to be understood by the world, like wanting, that kind of acceptance and unworthiness and all of those things. Lots of nuanced beliefs in relation to that were just sort of hiding there and crouching there, and like preventing me from moving forward. And so once I worked through all of that, and guidance, even, it took me to the right supplement to take. It directed me to the right diagnostic framework to use. It took me to the right allopathic practitioner who had kind of done some research on this, where I would get the right insight. Took me through all of that and to a place where, touch wood, I'm kind of 90% pain free.
Wow.
And you can say this to any fibromyalgia person. For them, it's like they can't get out of bed. That's how debilitating the pain is when it comes. And it leads you into depression, and it's very, very difficult condition to live with. But like, I've been traveling, I've been managing on my own, and doing all sorts of things. And it's if it's sort of the right path, and if guidance is supposed to take you in that right direction, then it'll happen. But if there is if there is like some karma still left, if there's something that you need to pay off, or there's something that you need to continue to experience. So see, for me, this, it's not like it's left me. It's in a manageable place. But there are times when the energy is really hard, or when I'm going through something hard, when it comes back, that means I have to look at something again. It's you understand all these nuances, but at the same time, guidance is not going to let you get attached to this identity of like, yeah, I'm cured, like, wow, this miraculous thing happened because guidance was in my life. No, if that's what's meant to happen, it'll happen. But if there's a lot more karma in that, or there's a lot more experiences that you need to have in relation to that, to learn and to grow and to evolve, then it's going to let that happen. So there is no end to something in that sense with guidance. It's not like, yeah, like, you had this argument with this person, guidance came in and said, no, don't do this. And it's fine. And it might be fine for some time. And then maybe something else will come up again. So as long as you're willing to learn, guidance is going to give you lessons. But if you're a happy learner, then you will kind of learn easily. If you resist guidance and you're like, no, I don't want to look at this now, then it'll kind of keep sending you the same lesson again. And so it's sort of like a long-winded, probably I digressed. I sort of went away from the point of your question, but I hope I answered some aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that you're much better, and that in the last year the healing that has happened has helped you, and that's really nice to hear. And thank you for sharing also so honestly with all of us, like your experience. I mean, nothing sends you spiraling more into depression and hating the world than falling sick. And I can imagine for most people, even very spiritually aware people, when disease sets in or a lot of pain sets in, it can be very difficult to maintain that sense, that state of openness to work with guidance, and instead to either run to a doctor and say, you know what, I'm just stick whatever you need to stick in me, or just to get into this fear mind state. But you've used that experience to actually deepen your relationship with guidance, and that deepened relationship with guidance has actually helped you get out of this. And the inquiry that you talked to us about in the first half of this podcast was used in such a deep way in these moments as well, whether you even questioned something that's the world considers chronic, and questioned as what was told to you as uncurable, and you asked that question, is that true?
Yeah.
Essentially, and then you worked your way from there, sort of pulling that string and trying to understand it, and that brought you to where you are today. And I feel like, I mean, I'm just reflecting now on what you shared, that it also goes back to the power that we can receive when we open ourselves to this wider intelligence.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, as you articulated, we're so limited by our beliefs, by this mind, by this body, by this just whatever conditioning that I in my tiny life have received from like a select group of people, a select group of institutions. Even if I may be a well-read person, like how many books am I really reading, versus like the amount of books that are there in, to be read. And so whatever information and knowledge I can receive, even if I dedicate my life to acquiring knowledge, it's still so limited. I think you mentioned earlier on as well about this, you know, this wider intelligence, this, tapping into that. And why would you limit yourself if you could have it all, if you could have this abundant source of intelligence? Yeah, I think this example that you shared perhaps is your living, illustration of how guidance can come in even in these like dark moments and really help us, and that there's immense value. Because I think right now, I can extend this into so many aspects. Right, today when we talk about the planet, right, the planet is sick. And if you listen to some of the most well recognized scientists, they will say that we've gone beyond the point. We've crossed 1.5 degree uh, global warming. There are so many rational scientific arguments to say that like this is it, with like extinction is now the path. But is that true? And who is saying this? Who knows this? And
Yeah, and what are they saying it for?
yeah.
And what aspect of their mind does that reflect?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that that level of inquiry is just so missing from from our understanding why we are sick. You started at the start of your remarks was that all disease starts in the mind, and that also is just so it does is isn't really understood. Maybe this is a nice segment also for some imagination and
Mm.
speculation. If you were to see like a world where more and more people start to bring guidance into how they lived, um, how would society and our institutions start to change? With given your intimate experience with guidance, like how could you imagine, let's just say, which is the healthcare industry and that whole part of our existence? How might that change?
I think the trick about guidance is to see that things are perfect as they are. And so I guess, I'm just sort of being challenged by the future tense aspect of this question, because
Mm,
guidance is so present, right?
mm,
And in my experience, guidance doesn't predict anything. It won't tell you like what will happen 3 months down the line. It can at the max tell you like maybe something tomorrow,
mm.
because it takes everything one moment at a time.
But so I guess maybe to rephrase it, maybe to help you with that, is like imagining more and more people, let's say listening to this podcast and start to, bring inquiry and start to bring in guidance. And more doctors as well became aware of the reality that sickness starts in the mind, and,
Mm.
start to recognize these aspects. Well, how might you see healthcare and that space change and evolve? I'm very curious.
I think, especially in terms of health, I think that the important thing that guidance might change in terms of like changing a dynamic is, I think, helping people realize that answers are within them.
Mm,
And so the ways in which they access healthcare, which is right now there's a sort of hierarchical relationship where there's someone who knows and then I go to this knowing someone, right? But with guidance, almost everything it sort of shifts. It is I come with this knowing intelligence
mm,
that has brought me to this person for a specific reason that it knows about. And so it's sort of the energy and the power dynamic shifts where the institution doesn't define you, you start defining the institution.
mm,
And so it's, in some sense, I would say it's like a divine anarchy. Everything, it's like, traffic in India. It's like There are no rules, but somehow everyone figures it out, and it's almost beautiful to drive here because it's fun and it's engaging and it's lovely. And it's sort of like that. Everyone figures it out. No one hits each other and they have fun. And I see it that way. I see it as sort of the power is coming from you. Because you have acknowledged that you are that power.
Yeah.
And you have that knowledge somewhere within you that you are the answer. And so when things are coming from you, there's a sort of the power dynamic shifts from this victim, like, I need something external to define me and to inform me and to create solidity, to I am solidity. And whatever I see around me transforms and becomes beautiful. So it is, I would say, like something like it's an empowered engagement where the institution becomes smaller than the community and the sangha or the consciousness. The institution is in service of it rather than people being in service of the institution or people being enslaved by the institution. And so even if we have systems in place, it could be a corporate system, it could be a healthcare system, it could be a social system. The system is just a scaffolding, is sort of like a dynamic scaffolding that is in service of the community. Yeah, and I think in its ideal sense, probably like a divine anarchy, like Indian traffic, where
Minus
everything
the
is
honking,
happening.
I hope.
Yeah, everything is happening, but everyone figures it out, and it's absolutely beautiful and fine.
Yeah. That's a beautiful picture to paint. And I think the emphasis on within, like the power within, is what I think also your story that you shared earlier was just illustrating. Like the power within when we start to inquire into our thoughts and start to maybe shed this victim mindset that
Yeah.
is it's such an integral part of being sick. Even when I catch a cold, I will feel like in some sense a victim from other people or circumstances or the food I ate. Yeah, and to also make a reference to the Course on Miracles, which you talked about, and what we also learn with our teacher GD is it's a shift of perception, really, that starts within, and
Yeah.
it's not really the external that changes; that our perception shifts, and we start to recognize the power that's within.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this message is so important to emphasize because right now I look around, and I'm so you do too, when you see data and statistics around, cancer rising, chronic diseases explicitly, rising all over the world. Like, I think the US might be the world leader, but definitely all over the world. And so, in some ways, what you described might be a big challenge of what many people in our generation and the generations, younger than us are going to have to face, which is finding themselves with chronic disease, finding themselves this very archaic healthcare system that we are in service of rather than the other way around, and we have to then navigate that reality.
Yeah, I think the way any institution is set up now is sort of like you're sort of enslaved to the institution. That's the power, that's the energy dynamic, and that's the power dynamic. And so you feel disempowered and you feel like you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the resources, you don't have the information, you don't have the people. And it's sort of that conditioning is reinforced, and then you sort of just go about living life and interacting with these systems in a way that sort of puts you, on the lower step and someone else always on the higher step, or the system on the higher step. And this happens with all kinds of obligations, from like, your interaction at the hospital to your family and social obligations. Like everything is, you live your life in service of the institution. But when you shift perspective and you bring that power within, like you bring all your energy back to yourself and you harness that power within, then what is useful to you will enter into your life and you will harness it with that intelligence. And the way you harness it will be in everyone's highest good. That's how that intelligence operates, because that intelligence is something that connects all of us. It's not it's not a different intelligence for me and a different intelligence for you. That intelligence is aware of everything that's happening in life on this planet or anywhere for that matter. That intelligence is aware of all of it, which is why it's able to orchestrate in the most beautiful way. So it's sending you to these right people and it's sending you in these right directions because it is part of this process that is orchestrating the highest good for everyone. So if everyone starts listening to it, then this orchestration is going to happen. Perhaps it's not going to look in any specific way to you, but this orchestration is going to happen, and it's already happening. It's already happening. It's already always happening. It's just that when you bring your awareness to it, it's a kind of sweet space where it's almost like, you know, let's say you're studying and you're writing an exam, but somebody gave you like a cheat code. It's sort of, then you can finish the exam faster, like you do very well on it, like it's sort of like that. So everyone's writing the same exam, everyone's doing the same thing, but you just have this little toolkit that is helping you get through it much more smoothly.
That's amazing. And okay, I'm going to be very speculative here, and because we've earned it after a long walk, which is like you're talking about guidance in this way, or talking about consciousness and this intelligence that is there. Sometimes today, when I see the AI narratives and I see about like what we're trying to create, and narratives like, let's create AI so it can do the work for us, so then we can actually go out and enjoy our lives, which is kind of a narrative that's being sold. And in some way, what you just described is also similar. It's like it's a cheat code. It will solve that difficult thing that you have in your life, so you can actually go out and experience peace, or you can actually like dedicate your life towards what you truly want, which is peace. And in some ways, this AI that we're trying to create is almost like, if we as people, we have denied this intelligence in our own lives, we've denied this part of us, we've denied it to the sense that we just don't even know it's there, we don't recognize it. And now we are trying to create it outside of us because we are so desperately yearning for something bigger than us, desperately yearning for something more intelligent than us, something that knows far beyond any one person, and that we've forgotten that it's there within us, and we are doing everything that we can to create it outside of us. Just a feeling that I've been having as I think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think in particular with AI, see, the constant question, if you look at it, like right from the beginning, like right from we made the first computer, it was the speculation was like, is this thing going to take over us? And are we going to become extinct? And every single doomsday movie, any movie about robots, any
Fear, yeah.
public discourse about AI is fraught with this energy of there is this thing that is going to replace us, substitute us, threaten our existence, and sort of, I guess, with a lot of these layoffs in these large corporations now, and with the creation of like bots and robots and these sort of algorithmic agents and algorithmic entities that act as people, that act as humans.
Yeah.
There's a whole awareness and attention to what is human, because there is a comparison with something that we think is human like, or we are trying to make human like. So I think the beautiful aspect of this entire fear based sort of almost like a spectral thing that has happened with AI is that there is an awareness that has been brought to what it means to really be human, what it really means to be a living, breathing thing on this planet. And if we take that gift from this experience and really tune into our guidance, we'll realize that a lot of AI itself resembles the ego. Like it's a thought system, it's a bunch of programming that's supposed to just keep, learning a little bit more, but keep kind of acting in those predicted ways.
Yeah.
But what we are learning is to set that programming aside and come from energy, come from guidance. And it's a sort of beautiful metaphor for us to kind of do that. actually do that. We're really kind of coming to that inflection point where we're like questioning what it really means to be human, what sets us apart. And in that process, realizing that actually it's only our guidance, because our ego mind is programmed. It's exactly like functions exactly like AI. You feed it a bunch of stuff and it keeps repeating the same thing again and again. But the guidance is the life part of us. And that's what, like, animates this planet, animates every living being.
Yeah.
And so I think it's sort of like, I get that, we sort of interpret it as like there's this, it's a brain outside of our brain kind of a thing with AI. And in many ways, like, people are trying to use it that way. We're trying to like delegate their tasks to it, or like get it to prompt and this and that. But once you start developing your relationship with guidance, like, the idea of doing that will not feel very comfortable to you, because there's an intelligence within you that wants to express, that has its own style, that has its own form, that has its own creativity, that has its own uniqueness. And once guidance becomes operational in your life, all of that will start to flower and to blossom. And this thing that sort of repeats itself will not feel very attractive and not feel like it's actually generating anything of value. And this is very visible. Like, they've done studies where, teachers have read essays written by AI and written by students.
Yeah.
And even if students' essays had like factual errors or grammar errors or whatever, there's that energy of their intention and their argument and everything that comes through the essay, whereas this feels lifeless.
Yeah.
There's an actual feeling of it being lifeless.
I totally relate to that. I mean, these days you can almost tell so clearly what's AI generated, especially
Yeah.
text, like the certain predictable writing patterns, whether it's M dashes or other patterns, and something in me just switches off. Like, even if
Yeah.
that post actually is saying something interesting and valuable that I'm actually interested in, but like something in
The
me just
energy of it is off.
it just glosses. And that certainly made me more aware in my own usage of being more aware. And we've just talked this entire conversation about living in collaboration with guidance. In some ways, like, you've cultivated the highest relationship. And so in some ways, again, what I hear a lot of people talking about AI is it's my companion, right? Second brain. It's this thing that will get you through life. It's that thing that will allow you to tackle the life stuff problems.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and it's now very compelling, right? Because
yeah,
it's been trained on like psychological self-help books, and it's been trained on everything
yeah,
pretty much. So it can sound very, very compelling. But at the same time, I think that's the thing, right? When you start cultivating a relationship with yourself, then your relationship with AI will become much more apparent to you. The nature of that relationship will become much more apparent.
yeah, yeah. And as you just said,
And you'll have a much more healthy relationship. Sorry to interrupt you. But you'll have a much more healthy relationship within the sense that, like, I use it. I use it to, do grammar checks, or I use it to organize my references. Like, I use it for things like that, which are like, mundane tasks. Like, I don't want to be sitting and formatting the whole thing all day. I use it for all those things. But
yeah,
to create, I
yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah, yeah. And I think as you said, it's a what if we can see AI as a gift, which is a gift to understand what is human and who is it that we truly are. And so we can then actually start to open up a new part of ourselves. And so this AI inflection point might be interesting, where there might be a lot of people who maybe go deeper into that space, but also a lot of people who will start to see and question, and that inquiry again starting to come in of what is exactly that I am different from an AI, and that can be a
Yeah.
starting point.
And it's doing that in so many ways. It's bringing us back to awareness in so many ways, because it is blurring the line between reality and fantasy. And that is something guidance
Yeah,
has been asking us to question for donkey's years.
yeah,
What is really real?
yeah, yeah.
And so, it's bringing all these elements that we've been sort of practicing and being asked to question right in front of our face. Like, you can't hide anymore. It's in front of you, and you will reckon with it.
Wow, we've covered a lot, and I'm sort of cognizant that we're sort of almost at the end of time. I think when I started Light Forest, literally the mission of Light Forest to bring more light into how we live and regenerate our planet. And I think the way you've described guidance is kind of what I was also feeling of how do we bring this into our lives? How do we start to live from the space and trust that from that space, whatever is to emerge will be something that we feel more comfortable. And if, in the start of the conversation, we talked about what guidance sounds like. And if guidance sounds kind and soft and gentle, then, living life with that voice seems certainly far more enjoyable than the one that's beating us and the one that's threatening us and the one that's making us feel ashamed and making us feel unworthy. And so much of what we create today is driven from that impulse. But what would it be like? Imagine if we start to create from that guidance space, and you're living that, and it's really
Trying to.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm really grateful that you could share this with all of us, including like the practices that you're using. I'll definitely highlight some of these inquiry questions in the show notes so people can even play with it. Maybe just to sort of round it off then is like, what are you up to these days, and where might, people who want to read more about you, read your work, follow what you might be doing? I know you have a Substack.
Sure. It's sort of, yeah, the subst. I mean, I'm happy for people to read it. It's sort of like an open diary of my reflections, and it covers all of these things from guidance to not knowing to worthlessness to everything that we feel is part of the human experience. And yeah, I think, I mean, I'm just sort of working on small projects on my own. In fact, one part of this project is actually about guidance and forgiveness and inquiry, and like creating a little workbook on, you know, just helping people out and like giving them some direction. Yeah, I guess the best way to reach me is by email, and the best way to read my work is, or like my spiritual aspect of my work is on Substack. And my academic work, it's online. You'll find it on Twitter.
Well, to everyone, yeah, you can find all these links on the show notes. Thank you, Pallavi, for joining and sharing your light with all of us.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
This is the Light Forest podcast, where we have conversations like we just had with Pallavi, exploring the roots to understanding who we are and seeing the world around us as fundamentally connected to our perceptions of who we are, what we're doing here. So I welcome you to subscribe. This is how we let the algorithm gods know that this content is interesting and it might spread this word to more people, and we can have a world where people are living with more self-inquiry. So thank you for listening, and have a good, wonderful day or night wherever you are joining from.